very much for tuning in, be it on YouTube or all the other podcast platforms. I don't know. I want to thank Conor Breen for coming on last week. If you haven't seen it, I would kind of say it's better watching it than listening to it, just because Conor's pulling off some magic tricks. And he says I did all the work. I really didn't do all the work. Although I will say I was sweating a bit because, you want to get, I like Conor. I wanted him to get the tricks right. But some spectacular tricks. I don't know. I was kind of thinking about the other night after I recorded it, and I was really trying not to spoil the idea. I kind of like the idea of being tricked like that, but your brain just wants to figure it out. But I didn't figure it out anyway. But regardless, thanks for your support as well through the week, and all the stuff we put out there. I even did a song the other day. Like, what are we doing? I'm going to introduce this week's guest. He is a mental health nurse, a hypnotherapist, and a mindfulness teacher, and his name is Brian Barnes. How you doing, Brian?
How you doing, Derek?
I'm fabulous. We were just like, this will come out in a couple of weeks, so it'll probably be snowing by then. But we just mentioned about before we came on there how beautiful it is weather-wise.
Well, I'm in Wexford, and the sun. I was there for a walk earlier on. Like, it's like a summer's then. It's lovely.
It's lovely, and even I was just yesterday. I was out on the bike, and it was like, even the breeze was very, warming, and there's really nothing like it. And I think we will talk about this kind of thing, but there is, you do get that boost, I think, when the sun is out.
Absolutely. Well, look, you're getting vitamin D from the sun. You're getting, like, you're outside, you're getting fresh air, you're getting serotonin, like all the feel good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And listen, because we're going to crack on, because Brian does a lot of stuff, and a lot of very, very positive stuff. So I want to kind of cover as much as we can. So, Brian, we'll start with a short history of your upbringing, please.
Okay, well, I'm 47. I know I don't look it, but I'm 47. I live in Wexford. I grew up in the Curragh in Kildare. So I spent my childhood in the Curragh camp. My dad was in the army. And then kind of went to college in Donegal when I was 17, started nursing when I was 18. And since that, I've mainly lived in Dublin. So I lived in Dublin for 21 years, a year in Australia, kind of in the middle of that, and Wexford the last nearly 3.5 years.
I was on your podcast recently, and Wexford, it seems to be a place where people go to when it is like this, I guess, when it is summer and stuff like that. How has Wexford been for you in the last 3.5 years?
I love it, man. Like, I suppose, look, it's called the sunny southeast. So people come down for the sun and, like, the beaches. So it's the kind of beaches, the sun, the strawberries. People are really friendly. Like, my parents are from Wexford. And all my family on both sides are from Wexford. So it's kind of been nice to kind of come back kind of to Wexford for me. I love it. Like, I'm close to nature, the beach, I swim in the sea. We can talk about that later on. Like, but like, lots of sea swimming, just being outdoors. It's brilliant. And like, it's just over an hour from Dublin. So, it's class.
It's one of those places. Well, this is only in my head, of course, but the map of Ireland, I always think it's going to be a lot further away from Dublin for some reason. I have it in my mind. It's going to be more than an hour to get there, but it's crazy to think that it is only that. Like,
oh yeah, man, I can get from my door here in Gorey to North Dublin in just over an hour. So South Dublin is less than an hour.
Yeah,
like, so it's again, I know what you mean. Like, you'd always think it's a fair drive, but it's only down the road. Class. And again, like, nature, beaches. People are really friendly. I love it.
So, Brian, when did you first become aware of mental health?
That's a good question, Derek. I suppose as a kid, I was always very sensitive. I was a very sensitive kid, kind of quiet. Yeah, just sensitive, a very quiet kid, very kind of lots of thoughts, lots of questions about life. I was always very curious about life and how people thought, and, kind of how, like, how my feelings and my kind of being so sensitive. So I was always very aware. I was always able to pick up kind of people's emotions, and I was always very sensitive to that, and I never knew why. So that was always there with me, and just always very curious and just asking lots of questions, tons of questions, which my kids do to me now, and it's like, oh, Jesus. But it's like, I suppose, it's as a kid, lots of questions. And as I got a bit older, I realized that my grandfather was a psychiatric nurse.
Mm.
So he worked down here in Wexford in St. Senan's Hospital as a psychiatric nurse. And then I heard a bit later on that his mother had been a psychiatric nurse. And my aunt is a psychiatric nurse. And on my mother, now this is my mother's side, and on my father's side, like, I think it's like 4 of my dad's 5 sisters are nurses. So when this realization started coming in, so it's kind of in the family, you know, and my grandfather was way ahead of his time. Like, he was a psychiatric nurse from the 50s to the 80s, and it would have been kind of very institutionalized, you know, like he worked in St. Senan's, which was an asylum in Escorty, and it was very much locked up, and it was behind closed doors, like a lot of mental health hospitals, asylums around the country in that time. And I realized that he was ahead of his time. He used to bring patients out to matches, to hurling matches, to the pub, to, you know, to the beach, to, you know, just outings. He used to do, he was big into horticulture. So he used to do gardening and vegetables and kind of farming in St. Senan's because there was acres of land there. And he also was into amateur drama. So I know he used to put on plays and shows and kind of amateur drama stuff. So that kind of got me, like, he was definitely, you know, he wasn't, you know, your typical, because like, you know, like mental health services were very kind of, you know, medical model and kind of very, you know, it was kind of lock and key really. So like he was way ahead of his time. So that was always in the background. Do you know what I mean? And that's how really I kind of got an introduction to what mental health was. And I suppose looking at my granddad, how, you know, like, let's say, how, like, I saw him doing things to improve other people's mental health and improve his own, you know, again, like matches and going to gigs and concerts and putting on things. So that kind of opened up that world for me, rather than, you know, the way it was kind of, you know, like, let's say, you know, at the time, which was very kind of lock and key. So that gave me a big insight.
I love the idea that your grandfather was doing those kind of things for people who were otherwise would have been, like you say, under lock and key. And you know,
unfortunately, like, you know, like it shouldn't have been that way. But, you know, like I've looked at the history of some mental health services, psychiatric services in Ireland, and that's how it was. We had thousands and thousands of people in asylums in the 1800s and into the 1900s, you know, so, you know, like, and it was very much lock and key, unfortunately. So again, I knew he was way ahead of his time.
It's a really grim history, and I guess it's not, unfortunately, not just Ireland, you know, it's kind of right across the board really when it comes to mental health. But so what was it then, the fact that you had so many relations nursing that you decided to take on the role?
Well, Derek, I suppose it kind of comes full circle to now, but like when I was 17, I started a business studies degree in Donegal. I always had a thing about business. And when I was 12, I had 3 summer jobs. I worked in a pub at night. I used to go digging ragworm, which was used as fishing bait, with my granddad. And I used to go picking strawberries. Right. So 3 summer jobs from 12 up to like kind of, you know, 15, 16. So like I had a kind of a business head on me. And I was always drawn to kind of that whole business and being my own boss. Like, I suppose looking back, it was kind of suggested to me that I did nursing. So I was 17, I had done a year in college doing business studies. And when nursing came up, I just kind of jumped. I just kind of went and did it. And I'm glad I did. Like, it wasn't my kind of dream job at the time. And like, I've been doing it for nearly 30 years now. So like, I obviously enjoy it kind of, you know, but, you know, like it definitely wasn't kind of first on the list for me. And I started to do general nursing in Waterford in 1993. I was 18. And yeah, I suppose the rest is history. Like I've kind of been a nurse now for nearly 30 years. So it definitely wasn't my kind of dream job, but, you know, like, and I've looked back, even my kids ask me about, you know, like, what to do in for your leave and certain what to do after school and stuff. And I say to them, look at, like, just do what you enjoy. Yeah. Do what you love. Because I suppose, even though it's worked out well for me, like, I was kind of encouraged to do it. And I was kind of, just went along with it, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, and I know it's more than mental health that you're involved in with your nursing, but just kind of for the benefit of this discussion, I wanted to ask, like, what over the last 30 years, like, what have you seen with regards to, the advancement of, mental health and nursing within mental health?
I suppose, like, with mental health, it's ever changing. And I know we talked about this before about, let's say, that kind of medical model that I mentioned that was there in my granddad's time, which was like kind of lock and key and medications. And that medical model has been changing kind of slowly, but it is changing to a recovery model. So the whole idea that kind of, people are on their own journey, because we're all on a mental health roller coaster. Do you know what I mean? Like, so everyone's on their own journey. And, so to move from a kind of a medication model to a recovery model, and to bring in kind of, let's say, a sense that a kind of a holistic kind of approach to mental health, which is that we all have mental health, and it can be, again, it's like a roller coaster. It's kind of up and down, but like, because I did a HDIP in mental health nursing in 2017, and so, like, I was doing a lot of research, and I based all my research on psychosocial interventions and therapeutic interventions, which is very much part of that recovery model, which is, like, mindfulness, art therapy, horse riding, nature, arts and crafts, talk therapies. Do you know what I mean? Like, like, so, like, all those kind of, basically those interventions that empower people. Do you know what I mean? That empower people with a mental health illness to kind of, look at where they are, where they want to be, and that they're on that journey of kind of self-discovery. Do you know what I mean? So that's the biggest change that I've seen. Now, again, going back to my granddad, he was doing that in the 50s, but again, he was ahead of his time. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose that's what sowed the seeds for me coming full circle to look at that whole recovery model, again, seeing what he was doing back in the 50s and 60s when it was literally lock and key. So it's much more community based now. Do you know what I mean? Mental health is much more community based recovery model, and just empowering people, because everyone's on their own journey, and like, over the years, the psychiatrists and nurses were seen as the experts, and now the actual person is the expert by their own experience. So it's kind of been turned on its head, which is brilliant. You know what I mean? And long may it continue. For
sure. And do you know what I found? I was thinking about this after, it was when I started listening to your podcast, Mindyou, which we'll talk about later on as well. But I was listening to the guests that you had on, and then after we spoke, the idea, what I was thinking was the idea that I wanted to start this, and I'm gonna guess that the reason you want to start yours was to get the conversation going and to get people to speak about it, introduce new things like the holistic approach and things like that, mindfulness. But I also was thinking about the idea that, with all these podcasts doing and people talking about it and sharing, I think it can only push it towards the actual, the people in charge of the mental health institutes or whatever they're called now. It's not. I know it's not. Probably the right. Is it mental health institute? It would be, wouldn't it?
Like a hospital.
Yeah, like like a wing of a hospital.
It'd be, I suppose, acute admissions or acute mental health.
But like, the idea of, like, there's so many people talking about it is going to kind of encroach on that idea that you're talking about, that old approach to it, just with medicine and, having the people in there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, look at, like, again, it's about shining a light on, the best way forward with this, because, like, we all have mental health and we're all on a roller coaster, and look at, like, the whole kind of stigma, like, I mean, there's an undercurrent of stigma and kind of shame and not wanting to talk about mental health. It's seen as a weakness, to talk about it. To have a mental health issue is seen as a weakness. to talk about it is seen as, you know, kind of, you know, you kind of keep it to yourself. And that's not an Irish thing, even though, you know, like it's an international thing. So it's about reducing the stigma and having an open conversation. And like what you're doing, Derek, like you're doing amazing work. And, you know, like the Brezzies and the Blind Boys and the kind of Brent Pope and all these GAA players and lots of international people. But I suppose it's almost to kind of get it across to people. It's not just about famous people talking about this. Do you know what I mean? It's about talking about it with your neighbor, or the postman, or your friend, or your, you know, your kids, you know, because it's almost like, you know, I think it's great that kind of celebrities and kind of high profile people are talking about this, but again, it's kind of, you know, it's to make it just part of every day, you know, at the dinner table, or, you know, asking your friend, how are you doing, kind of, you know, just to really normalize it, because we all have mental health. We're all on this roller coaster. The last few years, we're all swimming in a sea of stress. So, you know, it's just kind of talking about it and just being open about it.
So at what point then, Brian, did you decide to kind of branch off? Because you do a lot of stuff now with regards to a holistic approach. What point did you begin that?
I suppose, again, like I trained as a general nurse originally, kind of nearly 30 years ago. So like I loved that. And I worked in A&E and ICU and medical and surgical and orthopedics. And, you know, I really enjoyed that. And then I started working in intellectual disabilities. And in Sydney, in Australia, I started working in addictions in King's Cross, which was really interesting. And then when I came back to Ireland, I started working again in intellectual disabilities and addiction. So I was always, again, like, and because I was a general nurse, I was always able to kind of go from general to kind of mental health, which was brilliant. So I was always just, again, very curious, asking lots of questions. What's all this about? I suppose my first few years was very kind of, you know, like physical general nursing, you know, neck down, you know, kind of orthopedics and ICU and A&E. And then I started to see, you know, like working in addictions and intellectual disability, that, you know, that whole mind-body connection. So that's kind of, again, what made me kind of hungry to learn about it. And I started training as a life and business coach in 2006, because I had been for life and business coaching myself a couple of years before that. And it really helped me kind of, you know, kind of get more focused. So that helped me kind of, you know, let's say, be able to see that, you know, like you kind of, you know, you can have a kind of better focus on where you want to go. And then I trained I did Indian head massage. And I suppose that led up, then I started working in, again, addiction, and I worked in the prison service, which was kind of a lot of mental health. And then I trained as a hypnotherapist in 2015, and I trained to be a mindfulness teacher in 2015, and then did the HTIP in mental health in 2017. So I suppose they're the stepping stones that I took. But again, just always really curious, again, about how the mind and body work together, not separately.
I have you know, we had a hypnotherapist on, I think it was around episode 20 or so, and not that I was skeptical or something or anything, but I just didn't know anything about it, to be honest with you. What was it that drew you to something like hypnotherapy?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, I smoked pretty much between like when I was 17 to 40. So like, you know, over 20 years. And I was always kind of really trying to give them up. So I went to a hypnotherapist twice, back before I ever thought about training to be a hypnotherapist, like back in, you know, like the kind of mid 2000s, and it didn't work. And I was like, you know, like, and, you know, like it was kind of, you know, it cost a good bit of money, and, you know, like, what I know now is that I didn't really want to give them up. Like, I suppose my girlfriend at the time was getting on to me and whatever. So I didn't really want to give up. But when I start, and then I know a friend of mine was a hypnotherapist, and again, I was just kind of, something was coming to me that I was always fascinated by it and how it worked. And I read a few books on hypnotherapy, and just seeing again that it kind of really taps into that mind-body connection. So again, it just kind of came to me. It was just another one of those stepping stones. And I trained as a hypnotherapist in 2015, and I was still smoking. And in the course, we all had to do hypnotherapy on each other, and we had to do case studies. So I picked a guy in my class. He did a hypnotherapy on me. I did a hypnotherapy session on him, and he did it on me for smoking, and it worked. It pretty much worked. I haven't smoked since. So that really kind of, and I just knew as soon as he had done it, I knew that it had worked. So I suppose just knowing, again, how powerful it is. And again, it just really taps into that mind-body connection, which I'm so curious about.
Oh, yeah. I had an experience, and I mentioned it before on here, but the first experience I had was to do with Tracy was having me in, and she was going to help me with anxiety. But it was really just like an introduction to it, because we had spoken about it on the podcast. It was like, sure, come and have a go of it and see if it works for you, whatever. And for that hour, like you used the word powerful, like, but it was, there was just no anxiety. It was gone, for that hour. But even after leaving the office, like, because you have that in your mind, the memory of not having anxiety, it does start to creep up in you. And I know cigarettes and anxiety is different, but it starts to play on your mind that, like, well, you didn't have any anxiety back there, so why should you have it just here on the road or just, in the gym or whatever? It's so powerful. And I would suggest to anybody who maybe they might be talking about cigarettes, anxiety, there's many different reasons for getting it. I would suggest trying it once at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, look, I suppose a lot of people, a lot of people do meditation, and it's, the Headspace app, and it's kind of, it's talked about a lot. Like, hypnotherapy is meditation with a goal. So basically, meditation, mindfulness is kind of coming back to the moment. And, if your thoughts wander, come back to the moment. And it's being in the moment. And hypnotherapy is doing that by having a goal in mind. So you have an image in your mind, because it's very visual. You have an image of where you want to be. So, like, let's say, like, you look at where you are, which is kind of point A, and you look at where you want to be, which is point B. So it's kind of mentally rehearsing what you want to happen in life. Do you know what I mean? And again, that kind of mind-body connection, like, just to be so relaxed, like, yourself, that your anxiety went, and just to be so deeply relaxed, and you're using visualization, you're in a relaxed position. And like that, you're sowing seeds. So, like, as you said, walking out the door, you're like, well, yeah, if I can do that in there, so it's again, you're kind of mentally rehearsing. You're putting down new kind of, train tracks, and you're kind of putting down new stepping stones. And really, like, it's fascinating how it works. If you imagine, like, you're big into movies, I'm big into movies. When you're watching a movie, your brain, because it just sees an image, your critical factor goes out, because if not, you wouldn't believe it. You just know there were actors and stuff. So your critical factor goes out, and that's, like, that holds your attention for an hour and a half. So basically, when you imagine something, your brain doesn't know whether it's real or not. So if you imagine yourself playing piano or scoring the goal, your brain thinks it's happened already, because it's you've rehearsed it, so it feels familiar.
It's a great, like, yeah, like I said,
that's how it works.
Yeah.
Like, they've done amazing research with pretty much hypnotherapy. It's visualization. They got two groups of people. Let's say one group played piano for real, and the other group played piano in their minds. Like, they visualized playing the piano in their minds, and they both made very similar, kind of improvements. So, like, basically, because you're mentally rehearsing something, your brain thinks that it's real and that it's happened.
It's powerful stuff. Listen, Brian, take a break for maybe 20 seconds there. I'll just read out an ad. We get back to it. So let's get this right. I've been on a good run. Fusion Training Centre, Monksland, Athlone. A place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts, and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. That was actually all right. I don't want to.
Super smooth. And you said I'm smooth, man.
Yeah. Smooth. Oh no, you go to Brian's podcast, mind you. That's smooth as hell. But listen, Brian. So this is kind of a general question, because it means something different to everybody. Well, what does mindfulness mean to you?
That's a good question, Derek. And I suppose, yeah, it does mean something different to everyone. Mindfulness to me is just being in the moment.
Mm.
And, you know, because I know from my own research and from kind of, you know, psychology research, like most of us are either in the future, anxious about the future, or depressed and ruminating about the past. And, you know, like I am very good at being in the future and in the past. So it's just about catching yourself and coming back to the present moment.
Mm. There's something amazingly difficult about doing that. Obviously, when you're feeling down and you know you're having a difficult time, and like you said, you're thinking about whether it's the future or the past, you're thinking about, it's very, very hard to get there. We've all had our ups and downs, like you said. We've all been on that kind of mental health roller coaster. And when you are feeling a bit low or a bit down, like, what is your kind of tool, your mindfulness tool, to kind of get back to where you want to be?
I suppose it's doing things mindfully. Like, I suppose, like you, like I you know, I swim in the sea, I play guitar, I kind of, you know, I go outdoors. So like, you know, like I suppose that whole thing about sitting in a lotus position, you know, focusing on your breath. Now that's great to do. But even just to get outside and, you know, like kind of, again, maybe listen to the birds singing, or kind of, you know, go for a walk outside, you know, kind of pick up the guitar, you know, like, not everyone's going to have their kind of go-to, but it's good to have a toolkit. It's good to have a go-to to do it. So like, I suppose anything that really kind of just brings you back, like I use, like, you know, like I use lots of those things. Like I will use maybe a body scan. So like I'll sit down and kind of focus on my breathing. A big one for me, man, and like, if anyone wants to kind of bring any kind of mindfulness into their life, it's your breathing. It's kind of using your breath as an anchor. And I know kind of, you know, it's a common one, but like that's because it's the most powerful one. And breathing in through your nose. So I use 3, 4, 5. So breathe in through your nose for 3, hold it for 4, and then out for 5. And to do that even for a couple of minutes. Now, again, everyone's different. You know, some people mightn't be into walking or swimming or whatever. So like, I know you mentioned before about doing the dishes, you know,
Yeah,
and like
I love it.
that's me too. And like, that's a big Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. He died about a month ago. He always talked about, you know, if you're drinking tea, just drink tea. If you're doing the dishes, just do the dishes. You know, if you're going for a walk, just walk kind of mindfully. And it's just about coming back, because like, look, man, like, you know, like I've been on the mental health roller coaster myself over the years. And I know, you know, when you're not in a great position, or you're not in a great place, and you hear people talking about mindfulness, it's like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
but like, but the thing is, like, it's to do it when you're in a good place. You know, like it's to build up that muscle when you're in a pretty good place. Basically, it's a practice. It's a habit that you can build up. And again, everyone will have their own kind of mindful kind of tools, but it's just kind of to build it up and to have it as a kind of a tool to you know, when you need it.
Yeah, I like we had the conversation about the dishes, and you know, things like, it's the breathing is obviously massive. I've talked about how great that's been for my anxiety, and how it's been if I do have a panic attack, how amazing it is for cleaning up. And another thing about the breathing, actually, it's one of those things where you can do it anywhere. You can be walking around the shop doing it. Nobody's going to know that you're doing this breathing. You might be thinking, oh God, people are going to be looking at me. It's not like that. You're not like doing these massive, you know, it's very steady. But all those kind of things, it's about, as Brian said, like, it's about finding the thing that you enjoy doing and that you can do it mindfully and think things through, or think about nothing at all. I can't sit, like you said, the lotus vision. I'm unable to do that. So I don't do it. It's like, don't put yourself through something that you that you're really struggling to do. If you can think, you know, I'll play the guitar instead, you know.
Absolutely. Or whatever, pick up a book, or, you know, like, again, like jump on the trampoline, or kind of ring a friend, or, you know, like, again, like, it's hard, you know, like everyone will have something that will kind of helps them kind of, you know, settle down into themselves and to be in the kind of a, you know, let's say a relaxed kind of place. And just to do that, like, if it makes you feel good and it makes you feel relaxed, just do that lots of times. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's different for everybody.
Of course. So what kind of things would you do, would you cover in your in the mental health workshops?
Okay, well, I suppose I do workshops do them with employees and companies, schools, and just kind of different groups of people as well. I suppose I look at what is mental health. So I look at, let's say, a few definitions of what is mental health, and then I look at the biggest threat to mental health that we all have is stress. Like stress is a big one. Like stress causes at least 90% of all illness. Do you know what I mean? So physical and mental. And again, because it's interlinked, like stress is the big kind of, threat for like everyone's mental health. And the last couple of years, there's been so much stress. So I look at, let's say, ways to reduce stress and increase kind of, resilience, well-being. I talk about people just being able to recognize if they're stressed, like let's say, kind of if they're feeling anxious or if they're feeling kind of worried about things. Again, we'll all have our different kind of, let's say, reactions to stress. Because stress is actually one of the biggest tools you have, because stress is there to get you out of danger. The fight, flight, the caveman kind of, started it all off that if you feel threatened, that you either want to fight or run. So if there was a bear coming after you, you either want to fight it or run. So it's a really good tool, but if it's used too often, if that stress alarm goes off too much, it affects everything, because you're kind of hyper vigilant, and stress again is the kind of catalyst for anxiety and depression. Again, anxiety is worrying about the future, depression is worrying about the past. So we look at, kind of breathing techniques. We look at, I actually have a kind of a guide. It's medals. So it's mental health, exercise, diet, attitude, love, and sleep. So it's kind of a mini checklist that you can do on yourself, just to kind of check in, and again, look, at everyone's different. Everyone will feel kind of different, let's say, reactions to stress, but it's about kind of almost insulating yourself against stress. I talk about building resilience. So it's about building resilience. So like when something stressful comes, like you're going to be more resilient. I mean, like, let's say it's like building a house and you push on lots of insulation. When you build it on a strong foundation and you put lots of insulation around the house, because you can't stop the weather, you can't stop the storm, but you can insulate the house. So, I talk to people about insulating themselves, because, like stress is always going to come, like it's the only thing more, certain than, like anything is stress. But so it's about insulating yourself and being resilient when it does come.
And that's so, like, it's such a brilliant idea and an advice that I kind of wish I had back in 2009, but it was very much, obviously it wasn't talked about as much then, mental health, and it shows that it is being talked about now, but the idea, I hadn't built any foundations to deal with any difficulties that were coming along. But now, knowing what I know now, and knowing that obviously things are going to come along in the future that are going to cause me stress or anxiety, I at least have something there to build on. There has to be something. And I'm so glad like that there is these kind of things that people can go to now, like workshops that people can go to and talk. And, you mentioned about, sorry, Brian.
No, I suppose and look at, again, like I've learned this, like I have learned this from not having a foundation myself. Again, like I've had, I suppose I've been on a roller coaster of mental health all my life. And like, I know when I was 30, I had, a bit of a breakdown, and that made me reassess, what I was doing in my life. And that's when I started with that kind of coaching that I said to you. And then I actually trained in that. So looking, like, I know what it's like to struggle and to be on that roller coaster. So I'm just trying to share with people the tools that I've picked up that I know work. Like, I know these tools work because they have kept me kind of, putting one foot in front of the other, for the last kind of over 30 years. So I know they work. And I suppose, Derek, that's why I'm so passionate around everything that I do, because, like, I know what it's like to, the black dog, to have kind of, let's say kind of dark days. I know very well. So I know what I'm talking about works. I know it works because it's gotten me to here.
And that's it. I've talked about this before about the people that I went to see, whether they're psychologists or, cognitive behavioral therapists, and they've all been kind of different, and some have suited me more than others. But if I go to someone like you, and I know you offer one-on-one work as well, I think I need to feel that passion coming back. And I think, if I was with you on one of these workshops, I could feel it. That is such an important part of it. I can't go to someone who's clinical and, just all kind of, stuffy and just trying to get us through it. There has to be passion from the other side, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm the same because, man, like I can tell you now, like I've been going to counseling for over 4 years now. So, and like I would have been to counseling, in my kind of mid 30s, but I've been going to counseling regularly, like every few weeks for over 4 years. And the last few years, I've been to coaching. I've been to kind of, I go for Reiki, energy healing. So, I know the value of kind of, I walk my talk, do you know what I mean? And also, like I suppose I'm trying to bring, I suppose, like I've done, I suppose I've got the kind of the clinical background, again, the general nursing, mental health nursing, the hypnotherapy, coaching, mindfulness. I've studied psychotherapy and counseling, but again, like it's, like I've been in the trenches myself. And again, and I need to feel that with someone I go to, because some people, as you said, they can be too polished, too, clinical, and that's a huge part of, and that's a given in any counseling or psychotherapy or psychology. That connection between the two people is, so like the person could be a really qualified professional and have gone through their own crap, but if that connection isn't there, it's not going to work. So like that kind of human connection is massive.
Absolutely. Like I couldn't agree more. And is there, like, I had a life coach on before, and I didn't get to ask this question, but like, is there a certain pressure on someone who's calling themselves a life coach? Because I think without the we'll say the client going and not knowing exactly what the life coach is to do, we'll say, or is what you think they're going to do. Do some people think that you're going to just sort every bit of their life out and they're going to head off and be grand?
That does happen. Okay. I think they expect the old kind of Harry Potter magic wand. Now, I don't have one of those.
Okay,
I ordered one on Amazon there recently, but it still hasn't come yet.
It's disappeared.
It's disappeared. So yeah, of course, man. And I suppose, and I get that because I've been to some counselors during some tough times expecting the answer, like there's some kind of oracle, and that's not how it works, because we all are on our own journey. So I suppose a life coach works with people. Again, the easiest way I can explain it is I look at it's about getting from A to B. So someone comes to me and we look at where they are, which is A, which is right now, and we will look at I will look at kind of, where they are with their mental health and their kind of relationships and stuff, and what areas they want to work on. And then that's B. So like that's kind of getting from A to B to get to where they want to go. And again, I don't even have the answers for them. Like it's about asking questions around what, like, where they want to be, what changes do they want in their life? What are their values? So like it's kind of, it's like being a guide. So do you mean it's like being a guide, and it's kind of helping them to get to where they want to go, and just asking some questions along the way. I suppose as a coach, you're working partnership, because you're giving them accountability as well. But it's just looking at, kind of setting out their goal and then what actions they're going to take, and just kind of painting that clearer picture of where they want to go.
Yeah, I got that impression when I was chatting to Cheryl about the it was a partnership kind of situation, which is great. So the podcast, Mindyou, why did you want to set up a podcast in the first place?
Good question. Okay, I started the podcast in February last year, which is kind of 13 months ago, and I suppose I had this thing about doing a podcast. And I sat on it for about a year. And to be honest with you, like I was shitting myself that, like kind of just who was I to do a podcast and all these kind of, people out there doing podcasts and, but I just felt I had something to say. I was, again, my curiosity around self-care. And I just had this idea in my head, mind you, like it's all one word, mind you. And like, how do you mind you? So again, like I kind of just follow my gut, which I didn't always do, but I follow my gut and I was like, right, if I talk to different people that mind others, like about how they mind themselves, because a lot of these kind of psychologists and therapists and coaches and doctors, like they're just kind of sound bites, but they're not telling you what they do.
Yeah.
So, and I was kind of curious, like, okay, you're telling me what to do, but what do you do? Mm. Do you know what I mean? So, like, and again, my curiosity was like, okay, like, what do they do? Like, do they kind of, have any secret sauce? So again, I had that in mind, and to be honest with you, like last year I got COVID, so I was out from January to March for 9 weeks. And I was completely flattened, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Like, here's me, vegetarian, swimming in the sea. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I'm kind of, kind of as healthy as I can be, and I'm knocked on my arse. So I was like, right, I really want to do this. So that gave me the push to do it. And again, like I've done 70 episodes, including yourself, and I've learned so much. I've learned so much from those 70 different people, from psychologists to energy healers to Reiki to doctors to nurses, again, about what they do. And it's interesting because we've talked about this, about our journeys. Like most people on my podcast, and I didn't expect it, or we didn't talk about it beforehand, have had their own kind of breakdowns, have had their own illnesses, have had their own anxiety, depression, addictions, and that has come out in their story. So like, again, they're like, these people are actually walking their talk. So that's really what kind of got me on it. And then I suppose I was just so adamant to kind of talk to different people, and different people came onto my radar. And yeah, it's just about, again, that piece around self-care, which I'm so passionate about.
Yeah, I'm like that. It's such a great podcast, and I love the guests that you have on, because it does give you a look into the lives of the people who are, like you said, caring for others and helping others out, but what they're doing to kind of keep on top of their own mental health. And how have you found it as an interviewer? Do you feel that you've improved over time? Do you feel like you were comfortable at the start, or were you like me, just kind of fumbling around?
Oh man, I was like, Jesus, it's mad. Like it feels like 20 years ago. It's only 30, it's only 13 months ago. I was very nervous, man. And I was like, God, like, and I just kind of had this real thirst to do it and to just keep on doing it. And look, like, man, I've made every mistake under the sun, like as in, just recording like mistakes and editing and just kind of, like, but again, I just said, right. And like, it's funny actually, even recently I was kind of thinking, about let's even kind of like, just kind of, like, let's say getting listeners and kind of having people listening to it, because I'm so passionate around it. And, like if no one ever listened, I know I've learned. Do you know what I mean? Like, and like, I suppose just sharing that whole kind of knowledge that these people have. So man, look at like, again, you mentioned this about your childhood. Like I was very quiet. Like I'm a total introvert, like very quiet, very shy. And that's kind of my naturally who I am. So like, it was a huge leap of faith to do it. So like, it's given me a lot of confidence. And I suppose even doing my workshops and stuff, and like kind of, just being able to kind of, I suppose having more confidence, and, like, and I know that came from the courage to actually do it. It came from the courage that I had to really dig. And man, I was slaying fucking dragons, like, all these self-doubts. Oh, who are you to put out a podcast and no one's going to listen to you? Like, man, it was like fucking, taking on, like, the whatchamacallit, like kind of big dragons, like it was like a dragon slaying. So, and even doing that, like, even slaying those dragons, I've learned a huge amount about myself and about all the self-care tips that I've heard.
I think I had Lisa McInerney on, a great writer, like an award-winning writer, and serious awards. And she was talking about imposter syndrome, and I was like, everybody has imposter syndrome, and I was like, that's what I would say when I began. I don't have it now. I'm more comfortable in the role, and allowing people to chat and stuff, and I love it. But definitely at the start, it was like you were saying, who am I to have a podcast? Like, that's silly, But it's like, well, why not? Now I think that, but obviously I didn't at the time. But you mentioned something to me, Brian, when we were talking before about wanting to kind of establish a mental health network. That's probably not the word you use, but the idea of being able to have a group, or to meet up and talk about stuff. And you were talking about maybe some of your hypnotherapy involved in that. What was that idea, and where did it come from?
Again, now I know there is a lot of groups out there. I suppose, Derek, and what I've seen the last couple of years is kind of females, kind of women are really good at having these groups. Like, I have some friends who have these kind of, feminine force field group and empowered Celtic warrior women groups, which are brilliant. And, I think men, now that's because of our, our biology and physiology. Men aren't as open because, I suppose, they reckon, going back to our ancestors, the women were looking after the kids in the caves, and we were out hunting, and we were in our heads. We were kind of working solo, and the women were much more sociable, and that's kind of just how we're wired. So just to kind of try and get again that open conversation around stigma, around mental health, and and again, I know there's there are different groups out there. I set up a group. It's kind of based around a podcast. It's called Mindyou Men. Okay. So it's something now I need to kind of relook at it again now coming into the summer. But again, man, I just think, for men and women, just as humans, we need to be talking about this more and just having a more open discussion. And I know I talked to you about kind of linking up and doing stuff, because I suppose now, we can kind of all meet face to face. Yeah. And I've thought about even doing groups, maybe going for a sea swim and kind of maybe lighting a fire afterwards and having a chat, or, now I'm a busy guy. I work I do my, all my kind of well-being stuff. I've got 3 kids. So, I've just kind of looking at how it can kind of fit it in. But again, it's just keeping that open conversation, which we all need.
I think another thing about it, Brian, is the fact that it's such a way as society, and I'm not just saying this because I don't drink, because it's not really to do with whether I drink or not, but it's all based around alcohol in general, or the way we meet up is usually in a pub, house parties, or the idea when you kind of think, if everybody just sits there and thinks oh, what can I do that isn't involved a pub? The options are quite limited, unless you go to the gym or something. But if you want to go and talk to people, people, like-minded people, I think it's a great idea, and to kind of, to progress it. And I said to you, definitely on board. I know you're a busy man, and I'll definitely get involved with it through the podcast, because I think it is a very positive idea. And I know you said there's a few groups who go sea swimming or wherever they go. It doesn't matter how many there are, really. It's just about getting, who cares? Get as many as you want. Meet loads of groups out on the coast. It's all a positive kind of step. I think it's a brilliant idea. I know you just said, though, that you are a very busy man, so this question might be redundant. But what do you like to do in your spare time?
What do I like to do in my spare time? Well, again, I'm a busy guy. I've got 3 amazing kids. In my spare time, I like to I swim in the sea.
When did you start doing that? Was that something that you've always done, or?
I've always loved swimming in the sea, because I suppose even as a kid, my parents are from Wexford, so I was always on the sea. Now, really, in the last kind of 3-4 years, because I live so close to the beach. Like I've got a lovely beach about 10 minutes from here. So I've swam right up into kind of late November the last few years. And, it's just amazing. I just love it. And look, yourself, sea swimming it's brilliant. What else I do? I love to hike. I love to cycle. I love watching a good movie. I read. I play guitar. I write songs.
Oh, nice.
I've been playing guitar for about 20 years, and I kind of write songs and fiddle around with recording them. What else do I do? I love to hang out with mates. I'm blessed with some really good friends. I like listening to music. I love to. I suppose I'm a bit of a geek around everything we've talked about. I listen to podcasts and I listen to kind of talks on mental health and kind of psychology, and like especially the big guys like who are big for a reason, like Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle, some of those guys. And I get like you, I don't drink, so it can be kind of, I suppose there is a bit of a pub culture in Ireland. But so like I have a couple of friends that I swim with, that I kind of go out for a hike with. So lots of outdoors and like lots of chilling out as well. I love watching a movie and kind of just playing the guitar.
So you've done two things now, okay? Whenever somebody mentions a movie or they like watching movies, and whenever they say they like listening to music or playing an instrument, I get to ask these questions. Normally, I don't go down this route unless they're brought up. Have you got a favorite film?
That's a good question, Derek. My favorite film in recent memory, and like I have thousands of movies here, Inception. I love Christopher Nolan, so I love Inception, and that kind of brings in the whole kind of hypnotherapy kind of mind kind of. So I love that. And Tenet, I love Tenet. That was out.
Did you like to see? No, I'm gonna agree with you and then disagree with you. Just I like Nolan. I will say that, but I do think Inception is an incredible film. But I don't know about Tenet. I don't know why. Maybe I need to watch it again. Sometimes when you're in a certain frame of mind or a certain mood, and you think I'm gonna love this film, and then you put it on, you're like, I didn't really love that film.
Yeah. No, I saw it twice in the cinema, and the second time it was like, okay. Now I could probably do it watching it again, but man, I've seen Inception maybe 10 times, and I'm still like, what the fuck? And I love that. I love that. Man, I love Scorsese. I love like Quentin Tarantino. Like I'm a big Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs kind of fan. They'd be the big ones. What else did I see?
So I get to ask you another question now, Brian. I get to ask you another one. I don't want to spend it all on films. What is your favorite album? See, that's probably tougher again.
That's a tough question, man. My favorite album, gee, Mac.
It's a rotten one, but it's kind of
okay. I'll give you my favorite album. It's the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's.
Oh, look at that! I mean, he's gone into the top 3 episodes of all time just with that answer alone. He's gone. That is,
and that's fucking like, because I love. Have you seen Get Back? I've seen that twice. Nearly 3
me too.
times. And like, look at I love, and like, again, I suppose I started off like, when you play guitar, you always have a jukebox. That's the whole thing about playing guitar, man. Yourself. There's like, you could be on a desert island and you'll always have a jukebox. So I've learned hundreds of songs, but like, and I love like the Beatles albums. To me are like, oh man, they're like my kids. Like they're all such kind of masterpieces. But Sgt. Pepper's.
That's an excellent choice. Mine is I've mentioned it loads of times. Mine's Revolver, but Sgt. Pepper's is one of those ones that's so close to it. It's inches away from it.
It's close, man. There's not even millimeters between all the Beatles albums.
Yeah.
And I was looking this up only recently. Like, man, like they were so prolific. Like between kind of 62 and 69, it was only 7 years.
Yeah.
And it was like, like going from like the first shows in America to, Rubber Soul, Revolver, the White Album, Let It Be, like Sgt. Pepper's in the middle of that. Like they were just so prolific, and it was all such different, like music. It was all such different styles.
It's insane.
Man,
it's like 12. I think it's 12 albums in 7 years, and one of them was a double album. It's freakish, really.
Yeah, they were genius. Like, look, genius doesn't even cover it.
Yeah, and I've been doing this thing, Brian, recently, where I've been placing an LP behind me, and sometimes I explain why, and sometimes I don't. But I chose Cat Stevens' debut album for you, and I tell you why, because it's a very soothing and calm album, and I thought that this is exactly what's required if you are being mindful and you want to listen to an album. Stick on Cat Stevens' debut album and just chill out and have a good think. And I just thought it was suitable for this. I hope you approve of the selection.
Absolutely, man. When I think of chill out music, I'm thinking of Leonard Cohen. He has a great album. Is it 10 new songs?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
It's like, oh man, those such beautiful songs on that. It's amazing. Yeah.
He was so good. Listen, obviously, I wanted to ask, where can people find you, Brian?
Where can people find me? They can find me. Well, I'm in Wexford, the beautiful sunny southeast. So I suppose the main place to get me is my website. It's brianbarneswellbeing.com. Okay. And there you can find my kind of Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. And the podcast, there's a link to the podcast on my website. It's Mindyou podcast. And yeah, that's where I am.
Yeah, the podcast is on. It's on Spotify and Apple.
It's on Spotify and Apple and Google. It's everywhere. Yeah, and cool. Yeah.
I will make sure to put a link on one of our posts when this episode comes out, so people can get it. Find it easy enough anyway. Brian, it's been a pleasure and an education talking to you.
Thanks, man. Look, it's been an education for me, and thanks for having me on, and keep up the brilliant work, man.
Oh, thank you so much. Listen, if you don't mind just sticking around for a minute, I'll close it out and I'll take a little photo and we'll enjoy the sun then. Nice one, Brian. Okay, I want to also thank John for the tech advisory role he has. Nathan for the promotion. Thank you so much, Nathan. My mum, my dad, my granddad, Jaron Calvin couldn't do it without you with all the stuff you do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and we're also on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google Podcasts, etc. And no, I still haven't learned off what the etc. is, but there are other ones out there. I just listen to Apple, so it's okay. But yeah, to everyone who's watched and listened today, thank you so much for joining us. It's been brilliant. We will, of course, be back next week. And one more time, say thank you to Brian.
Thanks a million, Derek. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Take care, everyone. See you next week. Bye.